In 2013, I discovered a unique cameraless process which uses saliva on black and white negative film as a sort of etching process, leaving behind metallic silver and biologic matter. My ongoing series Mimesis grew out of these early experiments on film at a time when I was simultaneously thinking about the boundaries of photography, what is or could be photography's edge, and my experiences as a person of color in the United States. One thing that could not escape my mind was the question, what are you? This is a question that I first heard after moving to the United States, and as a French speaker translating this question, I was convinced of my own translation error. I could barely comprehend how to even begin to answer what I am in a concise response. We are far too complex for that. But as the question persisted, I found when my response was Indian, or that my father was born in India, that seemed to satisfy the asker. Over time, I tested my answers to this question because, truthfully, my mother has a long English heritage, and my father's parents were born in Colombo, Sri Lanka, and Karachi, Pakistan before it was Pakistan. Like many families, it gets more complex the farther I go back in my family history. A simple one-sentence answer no longer felt satisfactory. I tried answers like, I'm Canadian, or I'm a naturalized American, and these responses would be followed with, oh, you don't look Canadian. I realized that these questions were not about my accent or even my nationality, but specifically about why do I look the way I do. And these experiences undoubtedly shaped my own sense of self. When I began incorporating mark making into this new cameraless process, it became clear to me that it is uniquely qualified to address my questions, experience, and research, in a way representing both the biologic and the sociocultural forces that form an identity. Each photograph is inspired by a personal or collective experience or a sociological idea. The inspiration influences how each piece is made and how the final image looks. This piece may be one of the most recognizable sociological ideas as it references a Rorschach inkblot. In contrast, number 42 emphasis is shaped by a personal experience at a makeup counter where a woman identified me as part Indian because of the dark circles under my eyes and proceeded to use under eye brightener to cover them up. The one thing about my face that was recognizable as part of my ethnicity was not in line with her American ideal of beauty. My most recent piece, titled Dot Not Feather, references a phrase I have heard many times in the United States when expressing my Indian heritage. This phrase arises only after clarifying that Indian is in reference to India, not Native American or First Nations. This is, of course, an incomprehensible generalization of two very complex and diverse cultures. When I first read the term double consciousness in W.E.B. Du Bois's seminal book, The Souls of Black Folk, I felt as if I could now put a word to a feeling I had long felt, this idea of having a secondary awareness of how I might be perceived. In this piece, I wanted to visualize this idea as a triptych with two forms, two entities, two worlds, divided across three spaces. In this way, I can visually represent a sort of double consciousness, as well as the experience of being multicultural, being part of my mother and father's distinct cultures, and simultaneously not quite fitting into either. When someone views this work for the first time, more often than not, their first question is, what am I looking at? Likely because photography typically lends itself so well to clear representation. I secretly delight at this question because I believe it stems from the same place as the question, what are you? I know that this is a photograph, but I can't tell what it is, and I must know. I often wonder what this knowledge will bring to the viewer. Is it necessary to know what it is to appreciate it? Just like is it necessary to know someone's ethnic heritage to have a conversation? When I first heard this quote by Robert Giard, a portrait embodies both our will to know and the limits of our knowledge, I felt that this idea complemented my intention in this work, specifically to not incorporate my physical likeness. Because, of course, my physical likeness is at the root of the question, what are you? However, I began to view these pieces as a different kind of portrait, one that does not show you what I look like, but one that is built from my DNA and shaped by my experiences.